as the Shemush points out in this week's Parsha, that if you take the gematria of Moshe, which is 345, and you subtract from it the gematria of Korach, which is 308, then you get 37, which is the gematria of Hevel. Because, as it's well known, Moshe stands for Moshe Sheis Hevel, that he was a Gilgal of all these people, that in Korach, as it says in Shar Gilgulim, was a Gilgal of Cain, actually the bad part of Cain. And they're really what seems to be a new machlokus, a new disagreement between two entirely different people, in fact, is the final chapter of a long, ongoing story that goes back to the beginning of history in Parashas Bereshis, the story of Cain Hevel. And likewise, as it says in Parashas Bereshis, after Cain kills Hevel, Kosh Baruch Hu says to Cain, he says that the mouth of the earth has swallowed up the blood of Hevel. Likewise, Moshe Rabbeinu chooses, Hevel chooses, and quite fitting, because otherwise, why would Moshe choose that? Moshe says if you die by an unusual death, it's a proof that I was sent by Hashem and not by myself. There's lots of ways. Lightning can come down from the sky. There's especially in the midbar where there's no clouds. There's lots of ways to have someone die an unusual death that make the point that you are heaven sent and not working on your own. Why would Moshe Dafka choose that the earth, old Mother Earth, should swallow up Korach ve'adasa? Because this is in fact the midah keneged midah, the measure for measure. That just like Cain killed Hevel and the blood opened the earth opened its mouth to swallow the blood of Hevel, likewise here Hevel championed, so to speak, Korach on behalf of Kosh Baruch Hu, the Jewish people, and therefore the mouth midah keneged midah opened up itself, the mouth of the earth opened up its mouth in order to swallow Korach ve'adasa. Okay, so that's the idea on one level. As Rashi points out, this parsha, perhaps more than most parshiyot, is important to look at in terms of medrash and drashos, because there's a lot going on over here, much, much more than meets the eye, right from the very first pasuk. And Rashi really ever says that, so if Rashi says it, it's good advice, that's for sure. However, a little bit deeper explanation connected to this week's parsha, also to do with the idea of Ibur and Gilgulim, as we just spoke about just a few seconds ago. And last week's parsha, we spoke about the idea of Ibur, where the neshamas of Yosef's brothers, the original Shvatim, went into the Meraglim to try and help them to overcome the test of spying the land, which became an unmitigated disaster in the end. And the Arizal goes into a little more detail about the concept of Ibur and Gilgul and ties it back to this week's parsha, the very last line. So he says the following thing: Gam yodat in an Ibur b'chai. As is known, an Ibur happens during lifetime. Shudaima kesas Gilgul. It's a little bit like a regular reincarnation. Kamoshes be'er b'mkaimai bizrat Hashem. As we'll explain in its proper place, and actually did earlier in lots of other chapters as well. Kamoshes be'er b'in b'Gilgul. Kachu b'inin ha'ibur. Likewise, the same way it is by Gilgul. Likewise, it also by Ibur as well. We can't right now explain the sod of Ibur. Raka l'shlosha nefashos abaz l'sayei es nefesh esma shel adam. But what I can tell you is that you can have up to 3 additional souls in your body as well as your own at one time to help you become a tzaddik, to help you succeed at a mitzvah that you might not normally be able to succeed at given your own personal spiritual koiches. Right? So 4 of you at one time, 4 neshamas at one time. He says, "V'lo yotem mizeh," but you can't have more than 4. Not enough room. Not enough, whatever. Right? V'yesh chiluk ha'efresh ben Gilgul Ibur, but there's a difference between a Gilgul and an Ibur. Right? A significant difference between a regular soul that you reincarnate with, that's basically your soul for life, and the one that you get on loan at some point during your lifetime, right? Shehein misgalgalim ubaim beyached be'esel lidem mamash, because the soul you're born with, that you're born with. That's why it's the soul that you're born with. You're born with it, right? And until death do you part, as it says, right? But you're not gonna, it won't leave you until the day of death. And when it does go, so do you, because you're one and the same thing. Kulam nasim nefesh echat mamash, to become like one soul. The soul mitzar yisurim shel guf hahu, right? And it will have to be sovel all the suffering and difficulty the person will go through, because it's the soul for your body. So that's the body is dead without the soul, and therefore it all works together as one entity, right? He says aval ibur, right? But ibur is different. There are two types of iburim. Two types of iburs that could happen in a lifetime. The first one, kasher balatzorech atzmo shelmis aber, right? It's coming for the sake of the soul. The soul is coming down into the body for its own sake. Now you'd ask the question, why would a soul that's already left the body, left this world, have to come down another time? Because, as the Arizal points out elsewhere, everybody is obligated to fulfill all the Torah mitzvot. And you will ask the question, how is that possible? Because if I'm not a Kohen, I can't do the mitzvahs of Kohanim. And if, thank God, I'm married to somebody, and all my gilgulim, be they 100, whatever, and there's never a need for divorce, so how can I fulfill the mitzvah of divorce? Right? So the answer is because of or let's say someone dies young before they can get married. So how can they do the mitzvah kedusha? Right? So the answer is that you can come back as a soul in somebody else's body who's going through that specific mitzvah right now, and biyotzi the mitzvah for yourself through them. That's what it means. It comes for the mitaber. Okay, that's number one. That's stage number one. Okay, he says the second reason why the soul is coming down is not for the sake of the soul. It's not to rectify itself, but rather it's for the sake of the person who the soul is coming to help. Right? There's a fundamental qualitative difference between the two realities. However, in the meantime, one thing that is consistent to both of them, but it cannot come into the person anyhow, whether it comes for itself, comes for, right now he's talking for the soul itself, and it comes for itself, but it cannot come to the person until the person is of age to do mitzvahs, the bar mitzvah, or bas mitzvah. Because if it's coming to do the mitzvah, even though the soul may already has no age, really, quite frankly, a soul is always mature. There's no such thing as a child soul. It's just an adult soul in a child's body. But since the point of coming back is for the sake of completing the mitzvah that the person is doing, if the child's not yet obligated to do a mitzvah, it doesn't count as a mitzvah. Even though it's the same action, it's mesiras nefesh, self-sacrifice, but there's a technical reality where the person who's hosting the soul has to also be obligated to do mitzvahs in order for the mitzvah to count for the soul that's coming down to partake in the mitzvah. Okay, that's what he says, right? Therefore, the person must be 13 years old in one day, right, for in order to count as a mitzvah, right? That's what he says over here. And he goes on to say, and this ibur, even though it came not when the person was born, like the original soul of the person, but came later on, since it's coming down for itself and to partake of the mitzvah or mitzvot that the person's doing, that they're coming to the body for, so this soul, unfortunately, is going to have to put up with the suffering and difficulty that the body undergoes, because it's coming for itself. It's kind of a hitchhiker on the mitzvahs that this person is doing, so therefore it shares in the successes and the failures and the difficulties and the pain. Well, not so much the failures, but with the pain the body's undergoing. So it's aware of what the body's going through, right? That's what it says over here. The kamon nefesh adam atzmo, like the nefesh of the person himself, vayosheves b'derech zeh sham, and it will remain there ad sh'lishlam zman hakatzuv la l'takin lashli mashu tzarich. And since the Kadosh Baruch Hu sent this neshama down into this person, it has to remain in the body for a specific set time that Hashem determines for the sake of this neshama's tikkun, and it can't leave. It can't just come and go as it wants. It comes down for its own sake. Kadosh Baruch Hu sends it down to this person, and therefore it's there for the entire duration of time for the sake of achieving its tikkun.